You're listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones.
Good day, everyone. This is Dr. Tracy Jones welcoming you to the Tremendous Leadership, Leaders on Leadership podcast, where we pull back the curtain on leadership and talk with leaders of all ages and stages about what it takes to truly pay the price of leadership. And today, I am very excited to introduce to you Dr. David E. Schroeder. David, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so glad to be with you.
Thank you, brother. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Schroeder. Okay, Dr. David E. Schroeder is the president of Pillar College in Newark, New Jersey, and has served as president of 2 Christian colleges and 2 seminaries for almost 40 years. He's also the founder and the president of Masterworks Incorporated, an international disciple-making ministry. He and his wife have been married for 59 years and have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. David, that's a tremendous return on investment there.
And 2 great-grandchildren now.
How many?
2 great-grandchildren.
Oh, and 2. I need to add that to the bio. Got to put that in there. That's tremendous. Oh my gosh, David. Well, our listeners, you're always like, how does Tracy meet these great people? Well, let me tell you. David was at an ABHE, Association of Biblical Higher Education conference, right? Where he saw Dr. Peter Tagg, who is one of our 2-time authors, who is one of my spiritual mentors, who I had the joy of serving with when he was president of Lancaster Bible College. And Peter gave out his book, Jesus Leader. And of course, David looked at it, recognized the kicking man icon on it, recognized the word tremendous and said, hey, I think I know that. And so David reached out to me, and we go way back. A lot of you know I'm in South Central Pennsylvania, and I grew up going to a Christian and Missionary Alliance church off of Erford Road. And David was there. His father and my father were dear friends, and he supported him at Christian Publication Institute, right? CPI?
Yeah, CPI.
And David's siblings were friends with my siblings, so it was just the connection was absolutely tremendous. And then I immediately said, after hearing more of what's going on in his world, David, would you please do us the honor of being on our podcast? And he most graciously said yes.
Yeah, well, our families go way back for sure. Your father, Charlie Tremendous Jones, I knew him. I was just a kid when I met him, and I knew 4 of your siblings. I think you probably were born about the year I went away to high school. And so I didn't really know you then, but our families did. And actually, our families were involved in the starting of that church before it even went over to Erford Road in Camp Hill. So that's how far we go back.
That's amazing. And to be reconnected at this stage of life is so wonderful. So David, I'm going to get right to it. You have a really interesting, unique perspective because you knew Charlie Tremendous Jones and all about the price of leadership. This is a speech that he gave many times. Those of you that know my father know he was a very pragmatic about leadership. It was a joy, but boy, it was also a calling not for the faint of heart. And in this little speech, he talks about if you're going to be a true leader and not a leader in name only, there's a price you're going to have to pay. And that price involves 4 things. David, the first of them is loneliness. And it's something that everybody, I can hear our listeners going, oh yeah, been there, we hear about it. Can you unpack what loneliness looks like for a leader, maybe a time you went through it and how you got out of it?
Yeah, it's amazing. When you're not the leader of an organization, everybody relates to you as a friend. But when you're the leader, they relate to you as the boss and the guy or the woman who signs your check. And it's a very different feeling. And in a way, you lose a lot of friends. I mean, you still know them, they know you, and you're friendly with each other, but the conversations change dramatically. And so I think that's where the loneliness comes in, has to do with transparency, because people don't relate to you the same way. A lot of pastors have the same experience. A pastor comes into a social gathering and all of a sudden the language cleans up, or they stop serving certain beverage. I mean, yeah, there's that kind of loneliness. But yeah, I think, if you think about loneliness, the one thing that can help a leader is to develop a hobby that's not related to their work and meet people at that level where they don't see you primarily as the leader of XYZ organization, but as, a partner, a player, involved in your hobby, And so unfortunately, I don't have any anymore. I, I did for a long time when I still could be much more active in sports, but not so much anymore. But there is that loneliness factor. You have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people everybody will be friendly to you, maybe except the bill collectors. But it's just a real factor in leadership. Loneliness becomes part of it, and you may not know it until you get into it, but
Right.
you soon find out.
Right. And it's good to let our listeners know it happens to everybody. And I like that you talked about, being a friend and then you go into friendly. And it's a different boundary. You're in a different role, and it's kind of the natural. I think about Paul saying, you know what, you're not babies anymore. Grow up, eat meat. And so we're constantly pushing into new boundaries and spaces. I think of Jesus with his inner circle, his 3, and then the 12, and then this. So different people get to see you at different spaces. And if you're not prepared for it, it is lonely.
It is, but it's important for us, I think, to overcome the sense of loneliness by just being authentic.
Yes.
Being the same person that we are, whether we're with board members or with staff members or clients, customers. Be the same person and let others decide how friendly they're going to be, or whether they, in fact, I have some board members where I think we really are friends, regardless of our work together. And it's always good to know who those people are, that they will come to you or you can go to them with regardless of the magnitude of the problem or the issue you're facing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that that's a tool that you gave people. Just be authentic and let people decide where in that boundary space they're gonna fit in, because some will come back into that, but not all. So I love that authenticity, because that's what we're evaluated on. How well we fit that role, and then it's up to everybody else to come. What a great way to say it, David. Thank you for that. Yeah. So for our listeners out there, if you're kind of navigating that space, and it doesn't matter, like David said, how old you are. I'm stepping into different roles all the time, where I was once one of the masses, and now even with our neighbors. And so here we go again. Oh my gosh. Now I'm wearing a different hat. So people look at me differently. And so it's just something to always remember. But yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the liabilities of leadership, but it's a great asset as well for you to have influence in some ways that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the role as a leader.
I love that. And that therein is the trade-off. Yes, it's kind of winsome look back about what was, but what's to come, that's a natural progression. Yeah.
It is,
right,
yeah.
David? If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody would love everybody. Okay, so we talked about loneliness. The next thing my father talked about was weariness. And he was always very clear with me, Tracy, in working with people, you're going to have a handful of people that do way more than what you expect, but there's going to be a lot that don't. And I hate to make like a theory X, theory Y kind of thing, but he was just used to dealing with people. It is what it is. I don't know anybody who would say everybody I've always worked with just far exceeded everything. It's like, okay, well, that's amazing, but not even Jesus had that. So talk to me about weariness. How do you stay at the top peak of your form? I think you told me you were 80 and coming back in to run a college again, correct?
Yeah.
Ooh, not for the non-strong. How do you do it?
Oh, by God's grace and help and strength. But I think the weariness factor has a close relationship to your personality. We've probably all taken the Myers-Briggs and all of those tests, that sort of help us get it's a mirror to our personality and even into our soul in some ways. And certain kinds of people wear on you, and you get very weary just trying to stay in a relationship, and other people are life-giving to you. And you need to make sure that you have some of those people around you. Mm-hmm. And even those who wear on you, maybe there's a call on your life to help them get beyond that kind of situation. But I think weariness, usually comes not so much for leaders. Most leaders are oriented toward being either workaholics Or as was said about my sister Diane, I don't think you knew her. She worked for the provost at Michigan State University for many years. When she retired, she couldn't stop, and she created an organization called Grandma's Comfort, and they made and gave bags of goodies to homeless people, mostly moms. And her counselor said to her, Diane, you're not a workaholic, you're a missionholic. You like have to be involved in serving people as part of your mission. And it's not bad, but it can make you weary as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think those who are leaders, it isn't so much the work that wearies, at least in my case. Work doesn't weary me. People do.
I love that. I concur. I love people. But people, it's the old ministry is wonderful if I just didn't have to deal with it.
Yes. I've heard pastors say that. I love being a pastor. It's the people I can't see.
Boy, isn't that the truth? But it's just a fact, and I love that you said that. Be alert to it, and I love that you talked about some of those people, and I always say people when you're weary, are they annoying you or are they really stopping the mission? And if they are annoying you, I love that you said help them get beyond whatever it is that you're, remember people helped us. We weren't always these finely sharpened, rightly dividing the word of truth people we are today. We were pretty out there too. And somebody, spent time with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've learned from reading the Gospels, nobody was an interruption to Jesus. The disciples thought they were, Don't bother with these children. Don't bother with those lepers or those blind people. No one was an interruption. He could see that he had something to offer, regardless of who they were. And I'd love to think that I'm that way. I'm not that way. I mean, I do see people. In fact, one of the things I do, Tracy, sometimes, not every day, but especially when I have a busy day lined up, I pray that God will screen out from me any interruptions.
Yes.
But that I could then see that anything that comes my way comes through a divine filter, and that I have a role to play in their life, or they have a role to play in mine. Maybe it's something I need to learn from that person, and God's going to teach me that way. But I think that sometimes can be helpful, is to realize that no one was an interruption to Jesus. He ministered to all freely.
Well, we can stop the podcast right now because that was so good. I'm not sure how anything I love that. And he wasn't, and everybody else was trying to shield him for it. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And your talk about the prayer to stop the wearisome that makes us weary. Versus the divine filter to see that this is not an encumbrance. This is somebody that needs to come to you for whatever reason, a divine appointment. Okay, loneliness, weariness. The next thing he talked about was abandonment. And I can remember my father telling me, I was probably in high school, and he was in his basement office working, and he was kind of reflective. And he's like, Tracy, he goes, I do more in a day to contribute to my failure than my success. And of course, I'm just like, are you crazy? You're like the most. And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, because if I spend as much time on what I ought and need to do instead of what I like and ought to do and want to do. And so his whole thing was abandonment, staying purely and singularly, spectacularly focused on the task at hand and what you're supposed to do. And there's the personal development space has no shortage of how to stay away from the fear of missing out, the bright, shiny things. But David, with all you've got, and then you've got this ministry on the side, how do you stay abandoned to your best and highest calling?
Boy, I'm glad you're framing it that way. I thought when I saw that word abandonment, you're talking about abandoned from people abandoning you,
No, we know that happens. Just get over it. Find the good ones.
That's the loneliness part, yeah. How can I say, well, it's I think it's relating to what I'm called to do. And I have the saying, like, I turned 80, like I mentioned to you. If you're not dead, you're not done. I mean, and then I say, and if you're a believer in Christ, if you are dead, you've just begun, because our real mission is yet in the next world, I think.
Yes.
But recognizing that God's keeping me alive and giving me whatever I need to do because he's calling me to something. and it's a privilege. It's an honor. I stay abandoned to Christian higher education because I'm a missionary to the next generation. Well, actually now the next generation in a way, and that's it's in me. It's how I'm wired, and I just it's like you and your work. I mean, it's easy to be abandoned to something that you believe is absolutely in your core. It's in your soul, and I know your father felt that way. My father felt that way, about publishing, and
Yep.
and it was in their blood, and so you stay abandoned. And I mentioned before that I don't really have any hobbies right now other than writing, and that's where we're connecting as well, Tracy. But because you can stay so focused on the things that are count for eternity,
Yes.
and that's I think what keeps me going. You're right. I actually tried to retire in 2021. The succession plan didn't succeed, and the school that I was president of was not doing so well, so the trustees asked me to come back. I didn't even have to think or pray about that. I was so eager to do that because I saw it was happening,
Yes.
and I didn't want it to happen. So I'm back.
Yes. So you abandoned that retirement path and you went right back into it. I love that. And you're right. Charles would agree with that. And I'm glad you didn't say the word retirement in front of him. He would get very upset. He would smack people and say, "Don't talk so stupid. Retirement's not in the Bible." You know what I'm saying? And what if John had retired in exile on the island of Patmos? We never would have had and I'm like,
Oh my goodness.
don't say it. But his thing was work is more fun than fun. When you're in that zone, you count it all joy.
Boy, that's true. Yep.
And that's what you're doing. And I am just thrilled that you were so abandoned to that, you and your beautiful wife, that you're back up east and ready to come at this again. All right, David. Loneliness, weariness, abandonment. And then lastly is vision. And again, I read your writings and I'm just like, he had sent me a manuscript for our listeners and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a modern day Apostle Paul. And you guys know how I feel about Paul. And I'm reading this manuscript and I'm like, I'm trying to go to bed and I'm just reading this on apostolic urgency. So you know how that gets me going. And so I was so excited about it. But vision, when you're around great people like Dr. Tagg and yourself, a lot of us are like, okay, well, they're a visionary. And I hear a lot of people I coach, well, they're just not a visionary. But my father always said vision was just seeing what needs to be done and then doing it. So how do you, a very practical, for us mere mortals that don't feel like we're really touched with the strategic gene, I'm way more tactical than I am strategic. How do you really stay focused on the big picture? And what did you say? If you're not dead, you're not done. And if you're dead, you've just begun.
When you are dead, you've just begun. Well, I think, vision really comes from values. Values really, like the person who started this college didn't start with the vision, they started with values.
Ah, beautiful.
And the value in this case was Christ-centered higher education, something to help young people, become biblically literate, and so this is the Bible college, like Dr. Tagg, for those wonderful years he was at Lancaster. I mean, that is a wonder. Even I'll tell you this, Tracy, just last night I was with my granddaughter, who is just turning as a senior in high school. And I'm saying, you're taking a really strong look at Lancaster Bible College, right? She said, yes, I am. They've already visited. Because I know the values of that institution that built the vision that they're following today. So, but vision is, it has to come from God. Vision never comes out of a committee. I mean, we have boards. Boards are great. We have faculties, in our case, in education, but they don't breed vision. God raises up leaders and gives visions to them, and then they call around themselves those that agree with the values and the vision that is to be pursued. And they, and it's not that, I had a pastor one time, my mentor actually, Dr. Paul Bubna, said, Schroeder, you've got about 10 ideas every day, and occasionally one of them is good. And he was honest. But when it is a vision that comes from God, there's an excitement, there's an adrenaline rush. You realize this is not just a good idea. This is something I need to invest in. And I think it always has to do with serving. I think every vision that's worth pursuing involves serving. My pastor in Jacksonville one day threw out a statement, I think from the top of his head, but I had to memorize it, and I use it frequently. And it says, if serving is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. And I think that's true. I mean, no matter how high and far a person goes in their leadership, we still need to be as Jesus, the man with the towel around and going around, figuratively at least, washing people's feet. Be willing to take the lowest role and to help out. And I make it a practice of mine to walk around our campus and try to see the people regularly. I'm not by nature an extrovert, but I know it means something to them that I'm aware of them, appreciate their work, and I think it builds a kind of coherence to our institution. But all of this comes out of a vision of who we corporately need to be. I may have a vision for myself, but as a leader, I need to have a vision for our organization, for our ministry, our group, our church, whatever, that goes beyond me. When I talk to aspiring spiritual leaders who want to be a pastor, I say, in my experience, there are two kinds of pastors. There are career pastors and community pastors. And the career pastor is noted by moving frequently, and maybe getting a bigger church, or whatever. And sometimes they're called that way. I don't want to automatically say it's wrong, but community pastors really get my respect when they see that their parish is not the people that gather in their church building, but it's the community around them, believers and non-believers, from all of the different sectors of society. A true community pastor sees a calling that's much bigger and broader than just the people in their membership or their church life. So vision needs to be focused and direct at times, but it also needs to be peripheral to be able to see what is God's intention, his plan for those around me, not just the ones I'm targeted on. So those are just a couple thoughts about vision.
Oh, I love it. And I love that you tied it back to values, because I think some people, vision gets a little squishy, or you think it's too far, but go back to what you value. And I love that you said that comes from God. And then you bring it out corporately. And I love it's not so much your vision statement, but your value statement. And the vision statement is just how it's integrated.
Yeah. Vision will change from time to time.
Yes.
But they stay focused on the values that
yes.
don't.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. So, David, we covered loneliness, we covered weariness, we covered abandonment, and lastly, vision. Anything else from your decades of leadership that you would like to share with our listeners about paying the price of leadership?
Well, I can tell you about the calling of my life that changed my direction. So at the Campbell Alliance Church that I grew up in, after I was in seminary, I needed to go back because my father was having some health problems, and he was in the publishing work. And I worked with him for 3 years at Christian Publications. And everybody expected, well, that's my calling. And he had a board, and they were going to say, okay, you got your successor. And then I was at a conference in New York City, business conference, and the Lord put next to me a man who was going through some deep waters, and through some conversations, he came to see that Jesus was more than just a historical religious figure, and he received Jesus as his Savior and Lord. I connected him to his church that I didn't know about, but 6 months later, the pastor of that church met me at a conference in California, and he said, I've been looking for you. And I said, okay, what's up? He said, you sent a young man to my church, blah, blah, blah. And he said, and I'm here to invite you to come to be our youth pastor. Now, Betsy and I were working with the young people at the Camp Hill Alliance Church, and we loved doing that. But I said, no way, I'm part of my dad's ministry, I'm going to continue that. And then as we're flying home, I heard this inner voice saying, was that my decision or is that your decision? And as it turns out, it changed the direction of my life. I became a pastor, and I thought, okay, that's what I'm always going to do. But as I got into it, I realized the people even in the church were saying, you're more of an educator than a pastor. And one reason was because I continued to take a lot of graduate courses simply because I loved the learning. I didn't have any career goal from it. But eventually, I ended up getting a doctorate at New York University, and I got called into different areas of work than I ever expected. But I will say this, after 49 years of bumping around from many different kinds of ministries in radio and publishing and church work and education and all kinds of things, none of it made any sense to me. It was like a box of puzzle pieces that weren't put together. And then all of a sudden, I got called to be the president of Nyack College in 1993, and it all made sense. Every bit of what I had learned, I needed for that. So that, you can set your path out, but God directs when you're submitted to His lordship, and that's happened in my life, and it has been my trail for the last 40 years about. So that's been so important to me. The other thing I want to say, if I can just take another minute, is God also directed me to start a disciple-making ministry called Masterworks. And Masterworks is educational in a way, but it harkens back to the Lord's last command, which should be our first concern: go into all the world and make disciples. And not go into all the world and be a disciple. If that's what He had said, the church would have stopped in the first century.
Right.
It's make disciples. And he began his teaching to them with the be attitudes, not the do activities. And so what we do in Masterworks is try to help people not just become better disciples, but learn how to make disciples. And one of the fallacies is that there's a prescribed way to do that, there's some kind of formula. And so I wrote this book here, if I can put it on the screen. I don't know if it shows up at all, but called Follow Me.
Yeah, you've got your virtual background on the back, so I can kind of see it, but not, okay? But we'll put the link in there, yeah.
Okay, so I wrote Follow Me to help us with this ministry, and now quite a few other books that have gone along with that. And we're using them, especially in overseas contexts where they don't have the opportunities that we have in Christian education, or even the materials that we have available at hand. So that's what Masterworks is about. If people want to connect to us, we have a website. It's Masterworks Inc., I-N-C, Masterworks Inc., all one word, .org, if anybody wants to connect to learn what we're doing there. And like this October, Betsy and I will be going back to Thailand for the 8th time in the last 4 years with an amazing ministry where we're helping about 700 fairly new Christians who will find themselves being pastors of village churches. And there's a movement of God going on there like nothing else going on around the world. I mean, literally every single week, hundreds and hundreds of new believers coming out of the darkness of other religions and animism. So God's called us to that as well. I just would suggest to any leaders here on the podcast, be open to the bigger connection of our kingdom work. Our kingdom. We all have our organizations, and hopefully God's using them as parts of building His kingdom. But He's always building us as well as building our organizations, and building us so that we can participate more fully in the rich environment of kingdom builders for Jesus. And so, anyhow, those are just some thoughts I wanted to tack on here.
Absolutely. And David, tell us about Pillar College. For those people that have kids, grands, or great grands out there, tell us a little bit about the school, what offerings, undergraduate, graduate, terminal degrees.
Okay.
About.
Yeah. I describe Pillar College as a new college built on an old foundation because it started as a Bible Institute in 1908. And I came in 2007. It was still basically that. They had got chartered in 2001 or 2002, very early on, to be a college, a Bible college. And I came in 2007. It wasn't accredited yet. I left Nyack College and Alliance Seminary of over 3,000 students. For 2 years, I was in Chicago with the mission group, and then was called to come here to this unaccredited Bible Institute of 120 students. And it made no sense at all to do it, but we did. The call was clear, and we got accredited and so on. It was called Somerset Christian College. It was in the suburbs of west of Newark, maybe 40 miles. A huge hurricane hit in 2011. We'd already started teaching courses in downtown Newark. Now, if you know New Jersey, if you miss the cities of New Jersey, you've missed New Jersey. It's basically almost one big city until you go south. But we decided we wanted to be an urban school. We're moving back into the city, whereas many Christian groups move out of the city. And so we serve an urban population, mostly minority people who are taking, we have 5 undergraduate, but the major undergraduate majors we have are biblical studies, psychology and counseling, and business and leadership. But then we have an adult degree, and we talk about vision. We pioneered adult education in New Jersey. In 2008, I started what we called LEAD, Life Enhancing Accelerated Degree. And now there are 40 other schools in New Jersey competing with us for that market.
Wow.
But it's an amazing program. We're now opening our 111th and 112th cohorts of adult learners. And they're in one of those 3 majors within those cohorts. We also started about 5 years ago, and again, we pioneered this program called BLEND, which is a bad acronym. I'm good at bad acronyms, called Bilingual Entry Degree. It's in Spanish. And so I tried to do that in New York, but New York wouldn't let me do it. But New Jersey does. So we have a quite large part of our population are taking their associate's degree in Spanish while they're studying English as a second language.
Wow.
And then they can go on into the bachelor's degree and finish their bachelor's degree. We also have three graduate programs. We have a Master of Arts in Ministry Leadership. We probably will make that become a Master of Divinity, but right now this fits really well in the urban context. Master of Arts in Ministry Leadership. We have a Master of Arts in Counseling, which is a very strong program. And then most recently, MBA, Master of Business Administration in Social Sector Management. So it's got a distinctive taste to it, different from the typical MBA programs. So that's where we're at. We have a campus up in Paterson, New Jersey, the 3rd largest city. Newark's the largest, Jersey City second, and Paterson's 3rd. And we are hoping and planning to try to open up in New York City. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with about 70 pastors and business leaders in New York City, because now there is no longer a Christian college, evangelical, Bible-believing, Christ-loving college or seminary in New York City. Mm-hmm. So that's our plan. That's part of our vision.
Oh, we'll be praying for that, David. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just thank you so much for what you're doing. For our listeners out there, I will have all of the information. And David, I'll have the links out there. Is that the best way for people to connect with you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can either go through Masterworks that way, or I'm quite glad to interact with them personally through my email. Probably the best way is drschroeder at masterworksinc.org. That would be the best way to connect to me by email.
Excellent. So, I'll put it out there. Well, I'm not sure why you ever thought you had retirement in your blood. Maybe it's just something you thought you were because I'm listening to you, and it's what a blessing. I'm just so excited and honored to be connected to you at this stage of life and watch what you're doing and come alongside you. And thank you for sharing your memories of my father and for paying the price of leadership, David. Time is short, and we need people, really godly leaders, modeling what it's going to take and encouraging and equipping others.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tracy. This has been a privilege to be with you. And I wish you and tremendous leadership all the best. And I'm so impressed with the work you're doing.
Thank you, brother. Listen, for our fans out there, thank you so much. If you enjoyed what you heard, please hit the like and share button for other listeners that need some encouragement or some inspiration. And if you do us the honor of a 5-star review, that helps a lot too. Really gets our ratings up there. Remember what Charlie Tremendous Jones said. You'll be the same person 5 years from now that you are today, except for 2 things: the people you meet and the books you read. You just met the tremendous Dr. David Schroeder, and you can check out all of his tremendous books. And again, David, just thank you again to our listeners and everybody. Have a tremendous rest of your day.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones. Find out more about Dr. Jones at www.tremendousleadership.com. If you've been ignited by something you heard in this episode, let us know by leaving a review for Tremendous Leadership wherever you listen to podcasts, or by sending us a message through www.tremendousleadership.com.